Let me ask you a few questions. Have you ever been on the verge of despair? Have you ever lacked endurance to make it through another day? Now, I think the reality is that we can all answer yes to both of those questions. We've all been in those situations. And so the real question to ask is, how should we respond when we do lack endurance to get through to the next day? Or when we are on that verge of despair? Well, Psalm 13 gives us that answer. And so let's take a moment to read Psalm 13, verses 1 through 6. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Lest my enemies say, I have prevailed over him. Lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. I love this psalm because it shows us what we should do and how we should respond in the midst of despair and lacking endurance. In those first few verses, we see David lamenting because he's going through a situation in which he sees no end. He's going through a situation where he sees no light at the end of the tunnel. And he asks God 4 times, how long? How long? That phrase shows us that he is just lacking endurance. He's basically saying, God, I can't make it another day without you. Where are you? David almost feels abandoned or forgotten about God. And so that's the situation he's in. And look how he responds. And in verse 3, he begins and says, consider and answer me. You see, when David is lamenting, that leads him to cry out to God. He cries out to God. He says, God, answer me. God, listen to me. He says those words. He says, light up my eyes. He says, be here. You see, David cries out to God in the midst of his despair and lacking endurance. But here's the beauty of all of this. So his lament leads to crying out to God, and then crying out to God leads to trusting in him. He goes on to say, but I've trusted your steadfast love. Well, why can he trust in God's steadfast love? Because elsewhere in Scripture, we read that God's love is unfailing. Things in this world fail us all the time, and yet God and his love do not fail us. It's continuous. It's perfect. And so he trusts in God's love. He trusts in God's salvation. He says, I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. You see, we can ask ourselves, man, have I ever been in despair or do I lack endurance? The answer is yes. And I think in this time, a lot of us are feeling that day by day. But the real thing to think about is how we respond each day. And so, are you crying out to God? Are you trusting in his steadfast love? Those are the things that lament should lead to. Lament, being on the verge of despair, should lead you to cry out to him even more, day after day after day. Because when you do, that's going to build up your trust in the God that will never fail you. And so take a moment to just go through the reflection questions in this post, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.